Hello, welcome to the EPG Pathshala program in Linguistics. I am Professor Ravindra Gargesh from the Department of Linguistics, University of Delhi. Today we will discuss linguistic stylistics. The present module is the 11th module under linguistic stylistics, and this module is about poetic analysis. We will take a poem and analyze it. We will analyze it at the level of sentence symbol, at the phonological level, lexical level, syntactic level, pragmatic level, metaphor, similes, all that you have so far known, you are exposed to, and also symbols in art and the art symbol. Particularly what was done in module 3 is now being put into practice. The main objective is to show you how a poetic analysis can be done in the light of the discussions in earlier modules. The text for analysis is T.S. Eliot's poem, Rhapsody on a Windy Night. This modern poem has been studied at different levels of its organization as has been perceived in module 3. That's at the levels of the sentence symbol, symbols in art, and the art symbol. In the present module, you will learn about stylistic analysis of the poem in some detail. Now, the perspective to style within stylistics is viewed as essential constructive principle. Style is the essential constructive principle which reveals the functionality of a literary work. In a text, the elements of style can be said to be a limited set, which are stable, but in a reader's reading, they become expressive. The style features operate covertly to give significance to a text in their mutual interrelations. The reader is guided by the prominence in literary language in order to be able to concretize the import of the text. It also enables the linguistic features to become stylistics through a process of structural organization. Structural organization of significant parallels and contrasts of linguistic structures. The parallels and contrasts in literary texts can be seen to operate at all levels of linguistic organization. That is phonological level, lexical level, syntactic level, and of course deviation also at these levels, but more so at figurative level. Now we look at the poem Rhapsody on a Windy Night. This poem is about a stroller in the night. He's walking around a modern metropolis. The language employed in the poem depicts his experience, and we can look at that experience from our linguistic perspective at the level of sentence symbols. So suppose we have a poem, how do we look at it at the level of sentence symbols? At the sentence symbols, we look at it at the levels of organization, phonological, lexical, syntactic, pragmatic. At the phonological level, this poem has some patterns, not many. But some patterns do emerge, and one pattern which stands out is the use of free verse. Some incidental rhymes are also there, and some minor phonological patterns, but free verse is the most important one. The poem is marked by the use of free verse, and free verse is a phonological scheme in which a discourse is not presented in any fixed meter. So it can be said that Eliot's abandonment of traditional metrical patterns within literature itself is an act of foregrounding. The free verse brings the poem closer to rhythm of ordinary speech. In this poem, the rhythms are close to ordinary speech rhymes, and when it is so, such rhythms are called prose rhythms. So these poems have more of prose rhythms and no metrical rhythm in that sense. The difference between prose rhythm and rhythm of ordinary speech lies in syntactic patterns. The poem has syntactic patterns which are close to speech rhythms. There are some occasional rhymes in this poem. For example, use of onomatopoeic words in lines 14, 15, 47, 49. They are marked by past tense markers ed. There are some polysyllabic rhymes, 3-syllable rhymes in line 14, 15, created by onomatopoeic words like sputtered, muttered, hummed, and rhyme is created by this grammatical marker ed. the ed. It's a grammatical marker, not phonological marker. And it is attached to the onomatopic words sputter, hum, etc. And there is an internal rhyme also created by attaching the marker to mutter in the middle of line 48. So you can look at these lines on your own. These onomatopoeic words introduce the concept of the wind in the poem. Some other significant rhyming words are memory, key, in lines 72 and 73, and the words life, knife. Perhaps these are the only two instances of rhyme in the entire poem. Life and knife occur in the last two lines of the poem. The life, knife rhyme links the last one-line stanza with the preceding stanza. And there are, of course, some examples of alliteration, lines 21-22, 28-29, assonance, repetition of vowels, line 23, line 32, repetition of consonants, line 32, 38, and so on. More important are lexicon and syntax and pragmatics in this poem. At the lexical level, two lexical items, lamp and memory, play an organizing role in the poem. The words lamp, repeated as street lamp 5 times and lamp 4 times, this is one, and the other lexical item is memory, repeated 4 times. They are made to carry forward the propositions in the poem. The poem comprises distinct alternations of the acts of the lamp and the memory. Thus, stanza 2 deals with the lamp, stanza 3 with the memory, lines 33 to 37 with the lamp, lines 38 to 45 with memory, lines 46 to 61 with the lamp, lines 62 to 68 with the memory, and final stanza 6 with the lamp. Stanza 1 and the final one-line stanza, they serve as the encasement consisting of the direct commentary by the poemi. The significant lexicon involved in both the domains of the lamp and the memory are the words woman, cat, gutter, dust, eau de cologne, lamp, stair, bed, etc. These are used in the proposition of the lamp, and the words used in the propositions of the memory are twisted branch, skeleton, broken spring, factory yard, street, lighted bars, lighted shutters, crab, cocktail smells in bars, etc. Words in equivalent syntactic positions also form a pattern. They get linked together. For example, in regard that woman, remark the cat, regard the moon, the words woman, cat and moon get related to each other to form a significant relationship. Not only the person, the animal and the thing get related, but also whatever they do get significantly connected as well. In the same way, midnight is connected to madman and memory to a dead geranium, for the former in the two words occur as a subject and the latter as object to the verb shake. Take the example, midnight shakes the memory, as a madman shakes a dead geranium. Midnight and madman are subject, memory and geranium are objects to the verb shake. So they also get related because of their positions. Finally, it is the lexicon of time, that is expressions such as 12 o'clock, 1:30, 2:30, 3:30 and 4 o'clock that bind the entire poem. The poem depicts the eye of the poem walking through the streets of a modern metropolis from midnight to 4 in the morning and the observations at 1:30, 2:30 and 3:30 particularly stand out. At the syntactic level, there are a number of significant features. The most significant feature is the distinct grammatical code used in the direct speech of the lamp and the indirect narration of the memory. Let us call the grammar used with respect to direct speech as Lamps grammar or Lamps proposition, and with respect to the memory's narration as memory's grammar or memory's narration, MGMP or LGLP. These two different units get combined in the observations of the poem I in the first and the last stanza. There are many significant features concerning distinctness of Lamps grammar and memory's grammar. First, there is an alternation between the use of present tense and the past tense. In Lamps grammar, all the reporting verbs are in the past tense. The street lamp sputtered, muttered, said, hummed. Whereas its reported speech is in the present tense. In memory's grammar, in contrast, the present tense is used but only to present reminiscences of the past. The memory throws up high and dry a crowd of twisted things. Secondly, there is a dominant use of actional verbs and directional adverbs in Lamps grammar, whereas the nouns and adverbs of place dominate in the memory's grammar. Instances of actional verbs in Lamps grammar are the following: she hesitates, the door opens, her eye twists, the cat which flattens slips out its tongue, devours a morsel, etc. And occurrences of directional adverbs in the Lamps grammar are: she hesitates towards you in the light of the door, in the gutters, into corners, etc. In the indirect narration of the memory, there are a plethora of nouns with adverbs of place, such as in a twisted branch upon the beach, spring in a factory yard, eyes in the street, etc. Another marked feature of the poem is the abrupt or condensed or incomplete syntax in the last two stanzas of the poem, lines 68 to 78. The abrupt syntax is visible in the short, unrelated sentences. For example, here is the number on the door. Memory, you have the key. The little lamp spreads a ring on the stair. Mount, the bed is open. Condensed sentences are in the form of one-word sentences, one-word sentence lines, as in the expressions 12 o'clock, memory, mount. Incomplete syntax is visible in the last one-line stanza, the last twist of the knife, which is only a noun phrase in structure. Next we come to the pragmatic level. Analysis at the level of pragmatic level in L1 involves the recognition of the features that generate a fresh significance. This involves the recognition of the stylistic devices in the text which function to create new significances. The important devices that can be recognized are metaphor, imagery, simile, and personification, with an occasional use of synecdoche and paradox. Let us look at the metaphor. A number of metaphors have been employed in the poem with varying degrees of complexity. There are, we may say, simple metaphors, recognizable from the manifest linguistic derivation. Examples: whispering lunar incantations, dissolve the floors of memory, midnight shakes the memory. In whispering lunar incantations, whispering plus human is incompatible with lunar minus human. And in the second example, floor is plus concrete, it is incompatible with memory, that is minus concrete. And the third one, dissolve is plus concrete, it is incompatible with memory, which is minus concrete. Then there also occur linguistically identifiable sustained metaphors, such as a twisted branch upon the beach, eaten smooth and polished, lines 25-26, and a broken spring in a factory yard, rust that clings to the form that the strength has left, hard and curled and ready to snap, lines 30-32. Sustained metaphors refer to a metaphor with a pattern of relationship among the details. In the examples just mentioned, the metaphors are triggered by the metaphoric construction, a crowd of twisted things. The metaphor is recognizable here by the incompatibility between the features of the crowd, which is plus human, and things which are minus human. The things comprise the twisted branch, a broken spring, etc. A third type of metaphor, which we may call pragmatic metaphor, is also in the poem, can be identified. These are metaphors only in the pragmatics of the text. On the surface reading, they appear as mere descriptions, but subsequent reading of the poem shows that the descriptions are not only apparent and that they stand for something other than mere descriptions. So a close reading not only brings out the metaphoric nature of the descriptions of the woman, the cat, the moon, but also bind the three with a range of common significance. And finally, at the pragmatic level, the ordinary phrase, the last twist of a knife, is recognizable as a metaphor. It is a binding device that unites the disparate metaphors and images in the poem. The poem also reveals a number of images in clusters. The first cluster is in stanza 4. It consists of the image of a child grabbing and pocketing a toy with an expressionless face, lines 38 to 40. And second, people in the streets peering in other people's rooms, lines 41 to 42. And an old crab gripping the end of a stick held out to it, lines 43 to 45. Another cluster of images occurs in stanza 5, that is from lines 63 to 68, where sunless dry geraniums, dust in crevices, and various types of smells of chestnuts in the streets, female smells in shuttered rooms, cigarettes in corridors, cocktail smells in bars, they are all lumped together into a single grammatical object. Coming to the similes identified in the poem are: every street lamp that I pass beats like a fatalistic drum. The second one, midnight shakes the memory as a madman shakes a dead geranium. The light of the door which opens on her like a grin, number 3. Number 4, the corner of her eye twists like a crooked pin. The next one, and polished as if the world gave up the secret of its skeleton, stiff and white. So these are the 5 similes. It is through similes also that we identify the perceived world of the stroller in the night. The similes function as a powerful linguistic device for suggestiveness, as we will find it when we look at these very symbols at the level of symbols in art. Personification. There are numerous instances of personification. It's also kind of metaphorization. The most significant one is personification of the street lamp. The lamppost is made to talk as a first person, and it addresses a second person, here the I of the poem. The lamp's speech occurs in lines 60 to 22, 35 to 37, 50 to 61. The lamp's saying is in addition to the muttering and humming, all being plus human characteristics. In addition to the street lamp, the moon itself is personified. The moon is given plus human characteristics of not having ill will, of winking, smiling, smoothing the hair of the grass, twisting a paper rose, etc. between lines 51 and 61. This is also evident from the street being held as a man holds something in the lunar synthesis. Finally, midnight and the light of the door are also personified, for the former is granted the capacity to shake and the door is akin to a grin. Then there are some occasional features. Synecdoche and paradox are occasional features identifiable. Synecdoche occurs in the memory throws up high and dry. The synecdoche is recognizable, for memory here stands for the tortured mind of the poem I. An instance of paradox is evident in the expression "and through the spaces of the dark." Through the spaces in the dark. Paradox exists in the apparent contradiction that how can darkness have spaces? Space as a concept is linked with what can be seen and measured spatially. Darkness which is not measurable cannot be said to be spoken in terms of distances internal to itself. So this is for the recognition of the devices. Intertextuality. In this poem, there's a reference to a line from Jules Laforgue's poem in French with the title Complaint de Chabon Lune, Complaint of the Beautiful Moon, and the line repeated is in French, La lune ne garde aucune rancune. It means the moon harbors no ill feelings. This line is ironic because the moon here is not a fine lady, whereas in Laforgue's poem the moon is a fine lady, idealized. Here, not at all idealized. The two images, that is of the moon and the woman, here are kaleidoscoped into one. The moon harbors no ill feelings in the sense that she casts a soft, idealizing light on all objects impartially, just as the woman does not harbor any ill feelings towards her customers. So moon and woman become one. All the above features and images become symbolic in nature, and as symbols they await the recognition of their respective significances by the readers. All the symbols mentioned above function as symbols in art in order to reveal higher level significations. So after their identification, now we look at the second level where all these symbols have significations, that is, we see them in terms of some communicative competence. At the level of symbols in art, one reads significances in the stylistically marked structures identified at L1. All the levels of L1 contribute their bit to the significance of the poem. The level L2 may be considered to be a cluster of significations. It is at this level that the purely linguistic levels cease to have a hold or check on the communicative intent. In fact, they become more diffuse and they signify things other than what they literally stand for. So let us look at the phonological level. At the phonological level, the poem is marked by the use of free verse, onomatopoeic words, and some forms of internal rhyme. As symbols of a higher order, these have distinct significations. The free verse signifies a freedom from convention and delineates a rootless society, devoid of any sense of harmony. It de-automatizes the irregularity of the rhapsody. The onomatopoeic words serve an iconic function. They are the sounds that convey the meaning, the sense, the soft noise created by the fluttering flame of the lamppost. The rhyme in the last two lines focuses on the disparity between the two items life-knife and forces us to view them in terms of a metaphorical relationship. The life signified as an agonizing one. A tone of irony is generated by rhyming memory and key. Memory, which throws up many images, functions to heighten helplessness. It by the end reduced to perform simple tasks such as locating the key in the pocket. The phonological echoes such as alliteration, assonance, consonance, they build up equivalences which function to focus on the message wherever these devices are used. At the lexical level, a kind of lexicon used in the poem signifies an urban setting. All the lexicon, urban setting. Further, it can be seen that the great majority of the lexicon and the use signify decay and destruction. This is what they signify, decay and destruction, despite apparent heterogeneity. The repetition of the lexical items help to focus on the atmosphere. For example, the repetition of 12 o'clock. Lexical equivalences resulting from a similar position of the items in syntax structure serves the function of cohesion. So they link the various lexicon together. So in this way, prostitute, cat, and the moon get transformed. The moon gets transformed into prostitute. And all these images cohere together to signify, through human, animal, and celestial imagery, the widespread prevalence of helplessness and perversion. The repetition of lexicon related to time not only conveys the temporal sequence imposed on the tortured thinking, but also functions as an indexical sign, implicating the dark night and secondly, the state of hopelessness in the poem. The various features of syntax acquire a signification also. The alternation between the direct speech of the lamp and indirect narration of the memory signifies dramatization of agony. The two modes of narration are thus iconic representation of experience. The alternation between the use of present tense and the past tense serves as an indexical sign to signify not only the shifts in the memory in terms of past and present, but also to show that there is no essential difference between past and present, that present is only an extension of the past. The abrupt, condensed, incomplete syntax in the two stanzas is also iconic of the urgency to escape from the agonies of the perceived world. At the pragmatic level, interconnections of significant features signify many things. The reading results from, of course, our reading. With the expression lunar synthesis, the referential world is dissolved and a new fictional world is created. The linguistic devices are reduced to the function of mediating between physical world and literary world. The metaphor whispering lunar incantation signifies two things. First, that incantations form a kind of musical background, and second, moonlight seems to cast a spell through a magical incantation over the poem, so that the poemi is transported into a world where the past and the present dissolve. So in this way, all the metaphors have special significances which relate the present to the past. Another metaphor, midnight shakes the memory, also signifies two things. First, that the memory is shaken or jolted into activity, and second, that the verb shake has musical connotations, like playing of an instrument, giving the memory ability to produce music, or in other words, to create rhapsody. So there are various metaphors and sustained metaphors. All these metaphors refer to things other than themselves. All the cluster of images, they also refer to things which are other than what they literally refer to. The similes do the same, the metaphors do the same, the images do the same. And personification also carries forward the dehumanizing aspect. If you look at all these aspects, all these devices focus on dehumanizing aspect, on something, some insensitivity, on things that are going crazy in the modern world. The street lamp is personified, and its incessant fatalistic beating makes its picturizations sordid, as dead as the dead past. So looking at all these pictures, all these images, metaphors and similes and phonology at the third level, where all of them come together, the literary language, when viewed at level 3, is the highest level of signification. So we have to read the poem very carefully. So once we read the poem carefully and link the things together, we find that the poem represents the observation and evoked memories of the poemi as he walks through the streets of a city at night before reaching his lodgings or hotel in the early hours of morning. The agonizing journey through the city of this poem is like the journey through hell in Dante Alighieri's The Divine Comedy. The title of the poem, Rhapsody on a Windy Night, is significant, for it gives a unique relevance to different elements in the poem. The term rhapsody is used in music to denote an emotional, irregular music. The reading cannot be ruled out that metaphorically it intends to suggest that the structure of the poem is musical rather than logical or narrative. That is why the images are just presented in succession. They are like the musical notes. The word windy in the title is also ironical. A wind or breeze is associated with the poetic inspiration traditionally. Ode to the West Wind of Shelley. But the wind in this poem, under analysis, brings no inspiration or renewal of spirit. It is nonetheless a part of the background of the rhapsody, for it not only creates the sputtering sounds in the lamps, but also replicates aimless wandering of the poemi. So if we look at all these, we find what we can find from all this is that the rhapsody of the poem is a mental one. It is not a physical music. It's one where its distinct images comprise the musical notes. Music lies in the rhythm of the content that dominates the semantic structure of the poem. Each image succeeds the other as the notes in a musical piece. And the metaphors, the similes, and other devices show that things are not normal. There is no difference between past and present. We have the images, we have representations of a troubled mind, very troubled mind. At the level of analysis of the poem at the aesthetic symbol, where readers look at the poem and interpret in their own way, every reader can interpret the poem in his or own way. Of course, there will be some common logic to it. Here is an instance of what has been done. Some examples of critics have been taken. Some critics have talked about it. There have been two types of responses to this poem from critics. One type, people who appreciate the poem, and another who have been highly unappreciative. The most unappreciative has been Sparrow, who believes that no canon of intelligibility has guided the selection and no single structure of thought emerges in this poem, and he finds no meaning in the poem. Now what does this mean? How do we interpret it? What Sparrow is doing is, he is not dealing with the effects of the poem. He is only looking at what he does not find. Probably he is looking for something and he does not find, so he finds the poem meaningless. On the other hand, there are many critics who have appreciated the poem. They were able to decipher the code. Some of them viewed it in terms of dominant influence of Bergson. The dominant factor being, according to Bergson's theory, that the dissolution of orderly thought into irrational, almost surrealistic collage of discontinuous mental impressions obeys the laws of instinctive consciousness. Most critics conform to this view and try to explain the lack of logical progression in terms of this perception. This is a particular kind of worldview which can color aesthetic perception. So people have talked about it, Conrad Aiken has seen the poem as piquant and trivial. F.R. Lewis considers Rhapsody as imagery of urban disillusionment. So another critic has considered this as a sick version of life, that's Rosenthal. So the above realizations of the poem may be taken to be all realizations, whether by you or by anybody else, whosoever reads the poem and gives the view, concretizes the poem. These are different tokens manifested by the same type. The type is the meaning of the poem that we arrive at level L3, A, level of the art symbol, the invariant level, the potential. The text is concretized by the reader depending upon his or her orientation. And most critics have not only recognized intertextual elements used by Eliot, but have themselves used the intertextual capacity of the reader. The uselessness and futility of both present and past equivalences have been interpreted. All these realizations are linked to the sense of decadence, ennui, and uselessness in the poem. Nonetheless, what for one is disillusion, for another is aberrance, and so on. There are different manifestations, different allophonic variations of the same phenomena which the poem represents. In this module, what has been told to you is that a poem can be analyzed at three levels of its structure. One level is the level of sentence symbol, that is the linguistic level. The second level is the level of symbols in art. When we identify syntactic patterns, figurative language, all of them are identified and we know they stand for something, literal maybe. But when we look at them more closely in terms of a competence which is communicative, they become symbols and mean something else. At the level of L3A, the symbols come together and give us the poem as a potential, as one synthetic unit. And this synthetic potential, when readers read this poem, they realize it differently. That is the aesthetic concretization of this poem. All the aesthetic concretizations will definitely have a common element that binds them.